Hi everyone, it's Roger and James here from the What's on Disney Plus podcast. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about this week's annual shareholders meeting where we found out about some nice little nuggets about Disney Plus. We're also going to be having a little bit of a discussion about Hulu and ESPN Plus as well. That kind of was a fallout from that. And we'll also be sharing our thoughts on some of this week's Disney Plus and Star Originals. So before we go any further, some housekeeping. If you haven't already done so, make sure you are subscribed on the YouTube channel. And also you can find us over on podcast platforms, including Spotify, iTunes, etc. So you can subscribe there to keep the audio versions. You can also follow us over on Twitter and Facebook, and you can join our Facebook group where we just hit 165,000 members. So huge hello to everyone over there. Up next as well, we've also got, you can support us through Patreon or YouTube channel members, where you get early access to some content. You also get to take part in the weekly Q&As. And just want to do some shout outs to our Gold and Diamond members, including Bina, Bad Dog Gamer, Joshua, Amit, Ben, Adam, Dawn, Martin, Jeremy, and Sarah, while over on Patreon. A huge thank you to Sarah for being an executive producer platinum level. Also, hello to Andrew, Jacob, Caleb, Red Marsman, Andrew, Chris, Cody, Darren, The Juice, Lester, Lauren, James, What's on Netflix. Thank you for all of your support, and let's jump into it. So first off, there was the annual shareholder meeting earlier this week with Bob Chapek kind of running it. I'll be honest, it was not the most juiciest of meetings. There was essentially with this one, it was a little bit different to their normal quarterly results, because while they were kind of giving out some information, it's mainly something that they have to do, and they have to be able to answer questions from sort of shareholders. Now, the big news that came out of it was that they announced that they had 100 million subscribers to Disney Plus worldwide, which was big news. Though we kind of had already kind of thought that they got this number, well, months ago, because they announced last month that they were at 94.9 million as of like the 2nd of January. And that was even before WandaVision. So I was there going, they've got to be close to 100 million. And then was the Singapore launch. But they've now officially announced it. So we're now, it now knows that there's over 100 million subscribers, which is a pretty big number, isn't it?
It's an unfathomable number,
yes,
to be honest. But yeah, they had to announce it officially. And that's a stockholder meeting. That's the kind of thing this is for. They're supposed to, thump their chests and go, we're so great. Here's our 100 million subscriber. And I mean, honestly, I think you can thump your chest over 100 million subscribers.
I mean, it's a massive amount within the time frame, and it's just going to continue to grow. But they did say that they're only going to be giving updates on subscribers every 3 months now at the quarterly results. I think except for milestones. And we knew the 100 million milestone was something that they were going to shout about, so it made sense for them to do it. So that was obviously a big one. Also, Bob Chapek kind of continued along the lines of sticking with Black Widow being a theatrical release in May. I'm still very much keeping on to that one, but they still give themselves a little bit of wriggle room when they talk about it. See how they are, see what's happening. Because obviously right now there's generally a little bit of upchipper, I think, everywhere, with the vaccine program rolling out and more people things are opening up. It's a little bit tricky over here because our cinemas wouldn't open until about 10 days after Black Widow gets released. So that's a big problem. But also, will numbers come back? Because Raya and the Last Dragon did not do that well at the box office last week. It was at like number 3. It took half of what Tom and Jerry did. Now people go, well, it's on Premiere Plus or Premiere Access. Well, Tom and Jerry was on HBO Max, so and that was included in the package. It wasn't even if I had to pay extra for Raya. So that one was interesting, and just the numbers just as a whole have not been particularly good, but we don't know what the Premier Access result was. They haven't told us, and I don't think they will do. I think they can kind of go, we don't have to tell anybody, how well or bad this movie did. And that's the thing with Premier Access.
I suspect that that's not going to always be the case, and by not always, I'm expecting relatively soon, at least in the speed that media and legislation gets involved with, they're going to have to start revealing those numbers, and they're going to have to reveal how they get those numbers too. And this applies to Netflix, HBO Max, all of them, because this level of not being able to see what the numbers are just doesn't fly in this kind of industry.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is sort of something that's coming up because like Amazon put out a thing saying that their, the Coming to America was the most watched show, and like there was quite a few pundits and stuff going, well, hold on a minute, you haven't given us any data, we don't know any data from anybody else. That's a, it's a claim that like there's no data to go along with it. So there's a couple of different companies now kind of pulling in data, but they're kind of like from sample points, like Nielsen do it, so we cover the Nielsen top 10 every week. I think also like Jen, I think there's another company like Seven Park or Park Media, they also kind of release information that they collect, but we don't get any news directly from Disney. I don't think any of the streamers release any information because this is vital information. They don't want anybody knowing, and they can hide stuff when it's bad, and when it's good, they can kind of go, hey, look what we've done. So it's that's always certainly the way with this stuff.
Or they could just flat out lie. I mean, there's nothing really stopping them from lying. And we've talked about in the past too, what constitutes a view. You turn it on for 3 seconds? Is that a view? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 10% of the show, etc. We don't know because there's no standard. And this is an industry that was so very earthquakey because my cat's running around. So very interested in numbers that they developed the Nielsen system in the first place. And we think of it now as like, oh yeah, it's attached to every box in the home and so forth. But back in the day, they actually had to like go and physically give you a box and say, we're attaching this to the cable box. It's another thing. Don't mess with it. And they had to extrapolate numbers based on like this one person is watching it and that person represents 400 people or whatever. That's how obsessed they were with figuring these numbers out.
Yeah.
And now where the numbers are readily available because we all collect them, all the streaming services collect every single piece of data they can. There is going to be at some point people going, you need to share the data. You need to tell us what the data means. And then we'll quantify things like Coming to America was the most watched movie. Oh, well, we can see it because we have the numbers and we know how you got the numbers.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of an interesting way how this is all going to work out. And they're all kind of like working out what to do. And in some ways, it's probably going to take legislation to kind of make it happen because there's no real for any of the streamers to kind of do it because they don't want to, I mean, as much as Disney could come out and say 100 million people watched The Big Fib this week. It's like, we got no idea.
They might have. I mean, they could always do a thing too, where, you start up the Disney Plus app and there's like a 2-minute roll when you first start it up before you even get to the selection process. And hey, 105 million people watched the trailer for Winter Soldier because that's what we ran on the B-roll. It's like, well, technically, but we didn't have a choice. Thankfully, I don't think that's in the cards, but it could happen.
No. So also at the shareholder meeting, they Bob Chapek revealed that they were planning on adding 100 new titles a year to Disney Plus, and he specifically mentioned the 5 brands. He did not mention Star. So that's the first thing. So 100 new titles a year. Now this kind of was something I kind of looked at and was like, that's could be taken in a number of different ways. He didn't say originals. That's the first thing. He didn't say originals. He said new titles. So 100 new titles a year. I mean, that's literally barely 2 titles a week. So I don't think that's exceptionally hard for them to hit. But then it's like, what do they class as a new title? Is that a show that arrives from a network? So say, for example, we've got Gordon Ramsay Uncharted. So we're going to have that dropping weekly in June and July in the US. That I would consider that to be a new show. If it airs a day after it's aired on the Disney on National Geographic, I'd be like, yeah, you can call that a brand new show. That's fine. Raya and the Last Dragon, that's a new show. If they put Black Widow on in, say, I don't know, like August, because 3 months after it, does that count as a new movie, a new title? I would probably say yes. But would you be able to say Dinosaurs as a new title? I would say, I don't think you can count that. Personally.
But from the perspective, it's a new title because it was not on Disney Plus prior to this point. Whereas, say, DuckTales Season 3 would not be a new title because Seasons 1 and 2 are already on it.
Yeah.
But Dinosaurs, they dropped the whole thing at once. Now, I'm not saying that's right, but I'm saying from their perspective, that's probably how they do it. But this is exactly what we were just talking about. they need to be clear in the data. And this is not specific to streaming at this point in general. This is as old as television. It's time. Coming soon to TV for the first time ever. It's like, well, but I could watch it in the movie theater 2 weeks ago. Well, yes, but now it's on TV.
Well, I mean, it's like you click on and it will say new, because they do that a lot now on Sky. They'll say it's new, and like sometimes you go, no, it's not new. It's new for your channel, but it's not brand new. It's never aired before, or you've never seen it.
You'll get that too with like broadcast premiere on cable television. You're like, but it's been on HBO. Well, no, cable television, because HBO is premium, and it's like, come on, man.
Yeah, you do get that, but I think it's how they're going to do it. I think 100 titles a year, that's good. I mean, that's definitely 2 titles that's essentially works out about 2 titles a week, which isn't fantastic. I mean, I'm sure we'd all like not more, but but then as like I did say as well, you can only count WandaVision once. So that's Falcon and the Winter Soldier only counts once. You can't do
and it's also a possibility that they're just setting a low bar. We promise you 100, but really you get 150 because we got a whole bunch of back catalog items and so on, and we're expanding the originals. It is a common tactic. It is a very common Disney tactic to under promise and over deliver.
Best way to do it. The thing is, I mean, I think 100 new titles. I mean, if you look at all the originals they've announced for later this year, and there's a lot more to come, and then you take a look at maybe all the shows that the Disney Channel and National Geographic are making, and then you look at their cinema release schedule and go, actually, that's not that. I don't think that's much of a stretch. Just on that alone is probably coming close to around that number, because there's a lot more originals this year, a lot of shows. That doesn't even take into account the Star originals, because we're getting like 35 new shows for us. We're getting lots of, loads of shows coming, loads of Searchlight movies. So definitely for here in the UK, I mean, the 100 titles doesn't seem that much of a stretch at all, considering how many, I mean, I'm getting at the minute between all these the Star originals, we're getting like 3 or 4 new things a week. it's quite crazy with it all. But I do think 100 new titles a year, that's a good solid back foundation. We just have to see how all that works. But the more new stuff, the better. So let's now move on to some other things that came up during this event. So there was a few questions that got brought up. The usual stuff that kind of people have been like gunning for, Bob Chapek, and they announced it, and Bob had his kind of card ready to go, was able to instantly respond to people that were asking these questions and flat it away. But there was a few other things that came out, including that this past week, ESPN Plus is now available through Hulu. So if you have got the Disney streaming bundle, you can watch you can watch ESPN Plus through Hulu. You can also, you don't need to move into the other app. It's all there. And later this year, you'll be able to buy like UFC pay-per-views through Hulu. And there's a lot more interconnection now with that all being available in one bundle, so you don't have to do it. And I reported on it, and it's like, it's a big, and the reason why I think it's a big thing is because I would view this as this is the test run for when I think this is going to happen to Disney Plus. I think it's a no-brainer, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about it plenty of times, and of course with Star getting merged into Disney Plus everywhere except America, it makes total sense that once all the legal issues and ownership issues of Hulu are sorted out, it all just gets pushed right in. And if ESPN is already part of Hulu, then that makes it all the much easier.
Well, I think what this thing is now is that if they did it the same way they're doing it with ESPN Plus, it doesn't count towards Comcast. It doesn't count. They can get around it because they can essentially go, well, yeah, but it's like HBO Max and Stars and well, that's just a separate entity onto it. And I just feel like ESPN Plus being added in, this is like the test bed, see how it works, iron out the deals before they bring in, because they're both ESPN Plus and Disney Plus are both built on the same platform. So therefore, if they can do it with one, they can do it with the other. I think there's a big thing of just bringing them all into one for the US market. And I just look at that ESPN Plus content and just go, yeah, this is the start of the bundle becoming the one app.
Yeah, and that's what people want. Convenience is the name of the game in streaming. That's why people are actually kind of annoyed at the moment that you've got Peacock and HBO Max and CBS All Access and Disney Plus and Netflix and Hulu and all this. It's so much easier when you only have to go to one app and you can go, I open the Disney Plus, I've got the Hulu content, I've got the ESPN content, or I've got the Star content. It just makes it easy. I don't have to have three apps to access the things that I want.
Well, I mean, it's like now, like I'll fire up the Sky Q box, and it will show you like what's new on Netflix and what's new on Amazon Prime. It's funny because the Disney Plus is built into it, but they've not actually kind of been highlighting anything from there yet. But it does, as like you said, it does make life. You know, I see the BBC, ITV, and Netflix shows all on the one big thing, and you know, it's like if I want to click like on Cobra Kai last night, it just it fires up the app and takes me straight to the show and start. So that makes it a lot easier. So you can see how these aggravators are kind of coming in and like merging it, and that's what Sky are trying to become now. It's like, oh yeah, we want to be the hub. We want to be your hub to get into it.
I
That's
know
what they're all
that
trying to do.
I know that several cable boxes do that, where you can do a search within the cable box and go, oh, you're looking for Stranger Things? Well, let me boot up the Netflix app for you. And I think both PlayStation and Xbox are moving in that direction as well. I think they have some basic functionality in the new versions in the
Well,
PS5 and the Xbox
yes.
Series. They're working on it. It's not there yet.
I don't know because I know Xbox are shutting down One Guide and PlayStation are shutting down their movie store. So
Well,
yeah, it kind of feels like they're going in the exact opposite direction right now.
I think, yeah, no, well, the One Guide, obviously, it's not even so much shut down as they just didn't bring it over to the Series X, which was disappointing to begin with.
Do you know what? It was funny because I used to have my Apple TV going through the Xbox One and I used to use one. That was how I used to watch stuff through the Apple TV. Got a new TV, had the Apple TV app built in, so didn't need to use it anymore. But yeah, so that was the only reason that used to work.
I had a Chromecast going into my Xbox, and that would be how I would cast stuff to it. But now the Xbox has a lot of that stuff built in too. Like I don't need to cast Netflix because Netflix is in the Xbox. I don't think there's anything officially announced, but I would be very surprised if neither Sony nor Microsoft had some sort of plan to aggregate that, especially with Sony shutting down their video rental service.
So it's definitely that's, I mean, the thing is Hulu's kind of become that thing in the year, you know, because you've got access to all the extra content from like HBO Max and Stars, and you know Hulu's kind of this, you know, is like a hub. They've also announced a massive 7-year deal with the National Hockey League this past week. And usually we don't tend to cover sports, you know. I know you do like your hockey, so that was one thing. But what I thought was quite interesting was there's a new deal, and it includes ABC, ESPN, ESPN Plus, and Hulu, because they've also got international rights, they've got digital rights, highlight rights, and there's going to be games on Hulu. They're actually, this is kind of the weird thing of Hulu getting some sport content. And I'm there looking at this and I was like going, a 7-year deal to include Hulu. That's definitely sounds very future planning. I don't think the idea of like, we're going to merge Hulu with Disney Plus. They've just announced a 7-year deal with the. That's quite a big deal.
But it also kind of depends on how you view it. If you push Hulu in as a fifth pillar, or Disney Plus goes the other way and pushes into Hulu, less likely, then you still get the terms of the contract, and you get to eat your cake on top of that as well.
See, this is what I mean. There is that obviously the thing, and they could rebrand it, do whatever they want with it. But for me, this is all very much along the lines of the sports issues of, you know, I think Disney are like turning Hulu. They're looking at that as almost like they've got a different system that they can use in the US with Hulu, and Disney. I can imagine Disney Plus becoming available within Hulu as a bolt-on, and you get it all built in within one thing. And I think Hulu's probably going to end up probably looking more like Disney Plus eventually. They'll probably do it that way around. But all this content going into Hulu says to me, it's like, okay, they've obviously have got plans. They've got these like different tiers. You know, this is happening with, you know, Peacock already have the tiers. HBO Max is going to be doing this. They're going to be introducing a tiered system where if you are at a cheaper level with adverts, you maybe won't get like the cinema releases. And they're all tapping into this idea of going, well, look, there's so many different ones out there. Let's give everyone like the choice of having a cheaper version. You know, this idea. And Hulu's that's working for them, and then you can pay to upgrade if you're enjoying it or you get certain access. I mean, I know if I was in the US now, I'd be upgrading to Peacock because I could be watching the WWE Network. The things that this, you only need a couple of things on there to make it worthwhile you watching. But I was looking at this going, this ESPN content coming in says to me like they have got a plan for Hulu. It's not, and I still believe that how much more powerful Hulu would be if it had Disney Plus all built into it. And then you could kind of say, when something like Nomadland arrives, it becomes less of an issue because it's all in one big hub.
That's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah.
But yeah, agreed. This kind of hub system works pretty well. The one thing I would say, if more companies go to a tier system, that top level tier or even the middle tier, that better not have ads in it. That is, if you're paying that much for the top tier, trailers, pre-roll, but that show better not stop halfway and roll an ad. I'm just saying.
I mean, to me, it's that thing of if you're getting ads, I don't really want to be paying for it.
Exactly.
That'd be my way of looking. That's what I don't like about the Hulu thing, of like the $5.99 if you get ads. You've got to look at it. I know, for example, over here, Now TV, which is essentially Peacock, is going to be is introducing ads, and they're going to be. I think you can see that they're all shifting because they had these different passes, but their Sky Cinema pass is getting less and less interesting as they're losing more and more content. And yeah, you can see a big shift, and whether or not I can't see Disney Plus going down that line because they've kind of established it, but in the long run, we don't know where it's going to go. But there's a lot of stuff moving around. But I mean, yeah, like I say, I've been covering a lot more Hulu stuff on the channel for at least the last few months because it's so weird with all this star stuff. I mean, some of the things we'll be talking about later on. There's that line is so much more blurred now between what's is a Hulu original in the US, but everybody else gets it as a star original. Suddenly mixes it all up a bit.
It is kind of funny though that even with that line blurring, there still is a distinct feel between a Disney Plus show and a Star or Hulu show.
Yeah.
And for some people that will be better, and some people will view it the other way. Some people will say like, "Oh, well, that's the mature content. That's that's Burn Notice or Family Guy or shows like that." But it is interesting how even with that kind of blurring, there's still a very clear divide.
It's funny, obviously, like now we're like a few weeks into having Star over here. The adverts are still rolling, like promoting the shows and stuff arriving, and it's still very much like Star on Disney Plus, and when they put out the little blue icon or post every week, they put the little Star logo onto it, and they don't include the Star stuff in the new on Disney Plus. They've got like a Star Hut, and everyone's here going, put it all into one. It makes it like it's like this weird thing. We've had some I had some comments on Facebook and someone said, oh, it's on Disney Plus, and someone went, no, it's on Star, and it's like, and I jumped in and went, that is Disney Plus. You don't like we say, we don't go WandaVision on Marvel. It's a really weird line of like, I mean, I do like it when people do mention Star, so it makes it so it's easier for US audiences to know the difference. But at the same time, I've tried it with both things of like, put the title in, not put it in, and put Star in, not put Star in. And the amount of people that have said, well, you can't get Star without Disney Plus. So like, it's a really weird. You can see Disney trying to go, we're trying to create this. They're trying to create a brand, but at the same time, everyone's going, yeah, it's like most people are like, no.
Well, I think you hit on part of it, which is if we specify that it's Star, even if it's Star on Disney Plus or Star, at the very least, that is a clear, this is not on Disney Plus in America.
Yeah.
So that makes it easier. Now, whether people want to argue it, that's their thing. But I think the other part of it too is you talking about the two separate new on Disney Plus, new on Star on Disney Plus. For certain parents, and we're talking probably more American here, but still in general, we'll be able to go, okay, the Disney Plus section, I can feel secure in having the kids browse through that. Whereas maybe the new on Star, like if you got younger kids, maybe you don't browse that when the kids are around.
Yeah, the thing is, if you don't have the Star bit enabled, none of the content comes up.
Right.
If you I think it's more just a technical issue of whether or not it's pulling in. I think there's a lot of little technical issues that they've kind of like like we had with Disney Plus when it launched, where some stuff got turned off, and they could turn things off when they're like getting it tweaked, and there's so much stuff that I remember when Disney Plus launched that we didn't have, and they had to turn things on and off because like on WandaVision Day they turned trending off for the day, and then they came back the next day, and then it was a bit wonky. But that's the kind of the funny thing really with the app.
That one wasn't me.
Yeah, no, that was my dog. I'm just gonna have to grab something.
That's fine. I'll just mention real quick. Apparently, I can't speak. The idea of turning these things on and off, like the modular design, is more of an interesting technical challenge, and one that we actually deal with a lot, because for each individual person, that trending tab or whatever they turn on or off isn't a big deal in terms of like technical load. But when you're doing it for millions of people, it adds up, and it gets expensive too, actually.
Because that's I mean, I obviously on a Sunday I do like a trend. I do because just being the nerd of like me of kind of thinking back to the top 40 chart that we used to have on the radio every Sunday. That I used to, I like to have a record of it, and obviously it changes every day. But I know I was always a bit like, well, there's no point doing it daily because there's so little change. There was like, oh look, Moana's at number 3 again. It's like it just didn't shift.
Simpsons at 1, Mickey's Clubhouse at 2, Moana at 3, etc.
Yeah. It's funny now because it's what's actually happened is why did that come up? I went on to Disney Plus, either Hulu, ESPN Plus, and then that disappeared. So I don't know what's going on there. It's like now it's a bit funny because like it's actually the Family Guy. Family Guy is number 1 now. And it's been like that most of it, and it's even when WandaVision was dropping, other than Fridays and Saturdays, Family Guy was above it. It was quite strange.
I guess it's the hot show at the moment on Disney Plus, largely because it is the new show. I mean, Simpsons have been there, and people will continue to binge The Simpsons, but for a lot of people, they didn't have access to Family Guy, and now they do. So it's up there, and again, going back to the same old thing of like, how do they count? How does the trending go? Because if WandaVision drops 1 episode, then that's only going to count as 1 or maybe 2 because it's twice as long as a Family Guy episode. But if you're binging Family Guy, you're doing 5, 6, 8 episodes at a time. It's going to add up much faster.
It's very noticeable. It's like looking here at the UK one. I mean, we've got like trending is like Family Guy, Simpsons, Assembled, WandaVision, Grey's Anatomy, American Dad, Scrubs, Moana, Ugly Betty, Futurama, Castle, Mandalorian, 24, Clone Wars, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Desperate Housewives, Lost, Legends, Avengers Endgame, and Solar Opposites. Other than what? Avengers Endgame and Moana, the only 2 movies. TV is just, they're just people are just watching here in the UK. They're just watching the TV series, and just you can see them binging. You can see why that's working.
I wouldn't be surprised if they changed their algorithm so that more movies show up on the list, because we do know that the trending tab does have a certain amount of influence on what people watch, because it's right there, it's in your face, and you can go, what are people watching? Oh, this movie that I haven't seen is really popular. Let's see if it's good, and the fact that it is so heavily dominated by a specific set of TV shows that are not really changing week to week suggests they might want to swap it out so that it might weigh a little more heavily towards movies.
It was funny because the first week there was a lot of people watching like Deadpool 2. There's a lot more movies in there, so I think it's more, and I imagine it's exactly what I think has happened, where people were watching those movies in the first week, and then people just binging or going through. I mean, I know we're doing it. There's a few shows that we're watching on Star that we're watching them. And that's kind of how that kind of kicks in. But very interesting how this works. Moving on from there, we did get the new trailer for Secrets of the Whale, which is coming to Disney Plus on Thursday, the 22nd of April, which is Earth Day. Disney, National Geographic and stuff have been kind of celebrating Earth Day for a number of years, and this is getting 4 episodes, all narrated by Sigourney Weaver. The trailer looks great. There's lots of whales floating around, breaching, and it, to me, I'm really looking forward to the season. I love whales. You know, we've mentioned it a number of times before. The trailer, it was like, yeah, this is exactly what I would expect. And you're either into it or you're not. For me, it was a bit of an odd one because it dropped on the same day as the shareholders meeting. I'm like, I was expecting a bit more of a, you know, here's a big hit kind of thing, and I'm like, oh, Secrets of the Whales, not quite the document, you know. That was not quite the one I was expecting, but it looks good. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, the shareholders meeting this time around was definitely let's just get some facts out there. We're not doing anything splashy. We did splashy stuff not that long ago, so this is for actual shareholders. But yeah, the trailer for the whales looks great. I'm in the same boat as you, pun intended, of loving whales. I just want to have beautiful pictures of whales, and I think Sigourney Weaver will be a good narrator. Probably, I mean, she's not Attenborough. Sorry, David Attenborough, but I think she's got a good voice for it. And as long as it's not too intrusive and too like in your face, it should hit the spot just nicely.
Yeah, so that was a big trailer of the week. We've also got there's a few other bits and pieces, obviously, with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but I'm not watching them. Nope. I'm not watching any of the clips or any of the trailers. I'm trying to avoid all of them. I'm posting them. I checked that the audio is there, but that's as much as like.
No, I'm absolutely not watching them. I did watch the two new Legends ones, but we've talked plenty about. They're 7 minutes long. I don't care.
I haven't watched them because I've only just watched Winter Soldier and Civil War, like literally so therefore I didn't necessarily feel like I needed to. That's definitely a thing.
I have not seen Civil War recently. Obviously, watched Winter Soldier, and we have the special episode on that one. But even so, like I said, neither of us are the target audience for them because we're so in the MCU. But they work as primers for people who have not seen Winter Soldier or Civil War in a long time. That said, they're like 5 minutes long. Not a big deal.
So we got the Zemo and the Sharon Carter ones. But like I said, having seen the movies recently, I didn't feel the need to watch it. So we also had some other stuff that's dropped this week. We had Assembled, making of WandaVision. Did you watch that one?
I did, and it was really well done. I thought it was a good behind the scenes look.
It's that kind of thing, isn't it? Kind of, you look at it and go, "This is just and it always was. It is like they just took all the extras from the DVD and just merged them all into one episode and put them together. So we've got some talking about, you know, it's almost like when they were filming it, they were going, right, well, we do one about costumes and we do one about special effects and we do one about, you know, this and we do one about that. And then we just merged them all. And it's like, yeah, it worked fine. It is what it was. It ticked every box I was expecting. I was, you know, while I would love more of a gallery style one with the sit around with new content, it's just not possible right now. But what I did like about the episode was it confirmed all of what you said last week that I hadn't thought about, of all the filming of the end, of what they had to do. I didn't mention that they had to change it, but you know, you suddenly saw people wearing masks and everyone being spaced out, and you know, suddenly everything happening outdoors. And I watched it. I went, he was right. It was because I hadn't even thought about it, and until you said it, and then suddenly watching this, I go, yeah, he was bang on that.
What interested me though was that it actually appeared in some of the earlier episodes too. Now I know those would have been pickups and reshoots, but the first time we saw masks in the thing was like for episode 3 or something like that. It was, you know, there was a scene where they're talking, Wanda and Vision are talking, and then all the crew behind them, you got the masks and everything.
That must have been a reshoot thing for that.
I would assume so.
To me, it feels very much like what got me was I didn't quite anticipate was when they did the live studio audience thing, why they felt the need to redo the lighting and put the chairs out the same way to kind of it felt a little bit like you guys are just like doing this because you can rather than you need to. It's like, I'm sorry, but getting them to dress up and sitting them in like to make them feel like they're in the 50s, I suppose it can maybe gets them in the mood and for the expectations. But it was a bit like, you know, did you really need to do that?
It's one of those things I just generally don't question. I'm like, I appreciate your attention to detail. I mean, you see this on all sorts of films too, where
Yeah.
like Spielberg shot this in, it's a 1970s movie, so he shot it on like a 35 millimeter, and I'm like, cool, awesome. Or even something like Saving Private Ryan, he shot it
Yeah.
using like actual war cameras for the D-Day invasion. Like, it's cool,
Yeah.
awesome. Hollywood's weird. That's
Yeah.
all I really got to say about it. Hollywood's weird.
And sometimes it's a little bit along the lines of you've got a little bit too much money. To kind of it's like, why have you put in like railings to make it look like the 50s? It's like you could have just it needed just normal, like, I don't know. That's just my part of me going, this seems a bit of a waste of money, but that's my kind of okay. I it's like the chairs and going, well, okay, I suppose that helps, but I expect it was
I
a
mean,
lot less comfortable for the members who were watching it.
well, it was funny having them talk about the clothing they were wearing for the 50s, and
Yeah.
both Elizabeth and the
Paul
older
Bettany.
lady from
Oh
no,
yeah.
not Paul,
Yeah,
the
from
older from
the 70s
from
show.
the 70s show, yeah. And they're talking about like, man, this is so uncomfortable. My posture was all like I
Yeah.
had to stand straight, and Paul was talking about it too, and just like,
Well, he had like butt
yeah, he
things
did.
on him to kind of make him stand upright, and I appreciated that because I think that it made them,
Right.
it made them it was authentic and it made sense for them. I think the whole thing of them like looking blue and doing the whole that I did like that of like showing off them, and then they did film the stuff in colors and stuff, but I like this. I think the sitcom aspect was so important in those first few episodes. And there was an interview this past week. Apparently, the plan was to have all 3 episodes drop at the beginning, all 3 of the first episodes, but they were still editing the finale when WandaVision went out. So that what they did was to give themselves an extra week. They pulled back because all the press originally got the first 3 episodes. So I think they needed a little bit more time just to sort out the finale, because obviously that gave them 2 months to kind of get it done. So they pulled back to give them an extra week. So that might have, we did say at the time that would have been, that 3rd episode made a big difference in how we viewed it. But they did spend a lot of time that assembled on those, I think definitely on those 3 episodes more, because I think they were very proud of what they did for them, like how they did it and the wires. And it sounds like they all just had a lot of fun doing it because it was so different to what they would normally do.
I did really appreciate the actors, especially Elizabeth, talking about how much fun they had doing like old school Bewitched and Dick Van Dyke style shooting, and just like you could tell that the smiles were genuine for them, where they're just like talking, this is so much fun.
And it's like, Elizabeth said like the thing of like, all the stuff that she'd learned at college and stuff about like stage school, that you just were like, this is, why am I learning this? Because I'm never going to do this. We don't make this anymore. And she's, like you said, she actually got to do it for real for the, and I it's funny because I never really thought too much of Elizabeth Olsen as she kind of blended in with the Avengers movies, and I wasn't really, I couldn't even tell you what another movie she's been in. And like WandaVision really kind of was like, oh, she's actually, there's a lot more. It really woke me up and go, oh, she's actually a lot better than and I think, there was no escaping the fact that it was her show, so we got to see much more of her. But in the Avengers movies, I never really kind of like, she just kind of came in and like, okay, fine, whatever. And that was it for me, really. I really was impressed with the show, highlighted to her a lot more to me than before.
Yeah, the only thing that I have seen her in other than an MCU movie was Wind River, I think it was called, and Jeremy Renner was also in it. It was a murder mystery out in North Dakota or something like that. Really good movie, except for one really bad editing choice near the end. That's all I'll say about it. But I mean, she lived in the shadow of her sister. She even kind of alluded to that a little bit, talking about growing up on the Full House set. But one thing that kind of interested me with it was, I'm totally losing my train of thought here.
Well, I'm just looking at seeing what other movies is it in. Other than Godzilla, I haven't seen her in a single.
She was in Godzilla.
Thing. Yeah.
Which one?
The 2014 version.
Huh. It's been
a
while since I've seen that one.
Yeah. I don't really remember much about that one, but I think it was more maybe it's just having only seen her in the Avengers movies. I really did feel like WandaVision really allowed her to come out
Yeah.
and got to see her as an actress rather than because she got to do so many different settings. Like the 90s and noughties. She really got to play around a lot more.
I remembered where I was going with that previous thought before I got derailed. One of the things I really appreciated was her talking about how, like, when she started out with Age of Ultron and stuff, she's like, "No, I do not want the classic costumes. I don't want to be running around in the leotard and tights and stuff." And by the time they got to like the Halloween episode in WandaVision, she's like, "This is so much fun. I'm enjoying this because it it was obviously tongue in cheek and it's not her real costume, but an evolution." For the actors moving along these movies and going from it's a gig to I'm really investing in this character. You see it with Paul Bettany as well. I really loved that aspect of that of this behind the scenes look.
I was impressed with it. It was exactly what I wanted. It delivered what I wanted, and we're going to see more of them. There'll be one after Falcon. I suspect there'll be one for Black Widow. We'll have one for
I thought they confirmed the one for Black Widow already.
I can't remember. I know we're pretty much going to get them for every, and it makes sense to kind of make them into their own little specials. And if they release them as separate episodes, they become new rather than. I imagine they'll be done like that. But I was happy with this one. We also got what is it here in the UK? We had also the National Geographic documentary Own the Room.
Yes.
Did you watch that one?
I watched part of it, partly for time constraints, but also partly I got through, I don't know, the first 20 minutes and just like, can we move this along a little bit? And I did some jumps. I got to the end and they were doing that thing that you do with reality shows where like, and the winner will be, wait for it. And it's like, this is streaming. Tell us.
Yeah. I mean, I watched it early in the week and put up my review because I did have access to it early, and it was a kind of thing of like going, all 5 of the people that were involved in it were, they're all trying to vie for a $100,000 contract or for prize money in an event in China, and they all flew out to Macau for this event, and the 5 people that were involved in it, one of them was trying to make people happy in Nepal because so many people had left the country and there wasn't really an element of entertainment was not so much there at the time. So he was doing that. There was another one that developed an app that could translate what a baby's cry was. There was another one that she was trying to reduce the amount of testing that's done with using AI to help with that. And what was the other one? There was one that was like a deaf app or something like that for doctors and stuff. And generally as a whole, like the 5 people that were involved in it, I thought they were very intelligent, very well spoken, very smart entrepreneurs that have got a lot up and go, but they didn't have a lot of personality. They aren't entertainers. They are, they're young business people. They've got it's serious to them. And other than maybe the one from Nepal, the rest of them were very bland, and also, sometimes you needed, I think the Greek guy was quite hard to understand, so you had to have subtitles and stuff. And I was a little bit like, I know there was a guy in Nairobi as well who had created an app for students to be able to find accommodation when they went to university because there wasn't like a system in place like we have here. All of which very useful platforms, but like you said, once we got past the intros of the 5 of them, that was like, okay, the intro's great. That was exactly what they needed to be. Quite happy with it. Then it went to the Macau event, and then we had to go through all the different stages of the knockout stages, and I was just like, I'm then going, oh, this is so slow. It's really, I know you're trying to build the drama up and you've kind of, and then almost that kind of thing, like you guys have got like caught up in the drama of it for us like watching it going. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to an award ceremony presentation evening, they are so long-winded and this was that, and it was a bit like you do feel like watch the intros and then just skip like half an hour to 45 minutes to the end, and you probably wouldn't really miss. The only thing was the guy from Nairobi got stopped from going into Macau because they checked to see if he had enough money, and he didn't have enough money to get into the country, and they were like, and he was like, well, I don't need to because everything's sponsored. All my food, everything. I don't need to. Everything's been paid for. My flight. So he ended up having to go off to another country, come back in. But he was the only one that had been checked. Nobody else of the entire and it was like obviously that implied racism from the security staff. And then he got there in the end, and he arrived like minutes before he needed to, and it was like a little bit of drama. But other than that, it was a little bit on the lines of, they're all practicing in the mirror, and like one of them's going, well, I don't need to practice, and everyone, they were like, oh, this really could have just been done in a montage. It was and speed it up, and that was my problem with it. Is the concept was fine. It really just could have done with some real, like, probably could have been half an hour to 45 minutes, not 90 minutes. If you like science fair, it's a bit like that. I know Josh watched it and he said, he enjoyed it because it was like Shark Tank, and I was like, but it was so slow moving, and at 90 minutes, it was not a long one, but I felt like with science fair, the kids were all kind of like eccentric and they're a little bit more entertaining, whereas these guys were just very straight up business. We're serious, we take this seriously. There was no mess around, no laughs. It was fine. I gave it 2.5 because it was like, it's good, it's solid, it's straight up average, straight run of the mill. It wasn't amazing, it wasn't bad, but it definitely just needed a little bit of pacing issues.
I think they needed to decide whether they wanted to focus on the people or on what the people were developing. And from what I saw of it, they wanted to focus on the people, because the people's where the drama comes in, right? But I didn't even realize this until you mentioned it, but I think you're entirely correct. The people, they forgot to showcase the personalities of the people. I'm sure they have them. I'm sure that if you cut away and actually show them in their lives, they're interesting people, but they're just in this show, they completely forgot to make them into people. So if you're going to focus on them as people, then make them interesting, or focus on what they're inventing and go into like why it's important, what are the problems. If they had done more of that, honestly, I know that it was in there, but it wasn't. It was in there, but it wasn't a focus. But especially since I worked with technical stuff, and like the app would have been really interesting. What are the technical challenges that you are facing with this, and really go into how you plan to overcome them, or how you did overcome them, or things like that. I think that would have been a much more interesting show. And also, as you said, cut off like 30 minutes, please.
I think, way too much being given to like them giving their speeches. And I think that was they all then had to give their speech, and it was like, oh, okay. And I don't know. It was a bit, the trouble is, and this is the thing with National Geographic, just does not seem to be like, I'd be interested to know the numbers of what this is doing, because, this was like obviously the big original really for this week. And it just really just didn't, I don't know if it was the wrong platform. I don't know if Disney Plus was the right, because they weren't really promoting it. They were trying to, but I don't think the Disney Plus audience is like into these shows. I know from my own stats, that Own the Room was not moving the needle. And it was like, okay, hopefully people are going to find it and enjoy it, but it felt like this is something that gets lost on National Geographic when maybe the adult audience wouldn't know it was there.
See, I think the problem with it is kind of what I was alluding to before. It's got a bit of an identity crisis. Like they're like National Geographic or whoever developed this was looking at, Discovery Channel and things like that. And they're going, oh, we need that human drama. We need the suspense. We need we need to draw this out. And it's like, no, that's not what National Geographic does. Your information, your facts, your things that we want to learn about. I don't want this to be a show or any of your things really to be shows where I feel like I have to keep hitting the 30-second forward because you keep delaying the results or you keep delaying, that kind of thing.
I think they're obviously trying to build that drama so that when they finally announce the winner, and you're a bit like, I really don't care. I was just like, and that was the problem. I got to that point of going, and then they go, well, she's bound to get announced the winner because essentially we've just wasted an hour and a half.
Right. So two thoughts on that. One, just reiterating, it's not National Geographic's, guys. Don't make National Geographic's American Idol. I don't care what the plot is. I want to learn things. Two, and this is not strictly National Geographic's, we are in the age of streaming now. There is not a commercial break for you to get that pregnant pause
Yeah.
before the results. Just drop it entirely. It was annoying enough on television when you'd be watching American Idol and what's his name, Ryan Seacrest would be like, and the winner will be announced in like 5 minutes after these commercials. And it's like, nah. It doesn't work with streaming. We're just going to hit the fast forward button. Don't even bother with it. Find another gimmick. Find one that's less annoying.
Yeah, it's a shame in here because it's like I would like more stuff like this on Disney Plus, but they're gonna have to find the right way of doing it with this stuff, because I'm hoping with Secrets of the Whales that will pull people in, but I put this down to Disney. National Geographic has always been like the side thing of like, and Disney Plus just became this, as we've said before, the kids platform. So therefore the problem was that I don't know if adults were checking it out because of it, and the youngsters are just not looking at National Geographic content at all. I do think like with the addition of Star for us, they've got better chance of watching it because now you've got adults going in there that might be like, oh, what's that? You've got a little bit, there's, like my wife was talking to some people at work the other day and she was telling them, oh, you can watch this on Star, and and then she messaged me, it's Star on Disney, it's Star Extra, that she was telling about all these shows that she's watching, but it was that thing of like she's only watching it because of Star. That was the that's adults talking about a show. They might be more inclined to find that documentary because they're now in there invested themselves. Whereas I don't know if some people are. I don't know. National Geographic's are really all on that. They make some fantastic stuff. But ultimately, I mean, On the Room would have been a much cheaper show for them to make. It's not such an expensive outlay.
I mean, that's always a factor as well. This show is not going to cost as much as tracking down a whole bunch of whales and filming them. That's not a cheap thing. People tend to forget how big the oceans are and how small whales are relative to how big the ocean is. But just in general, the National Geographic shows probably have larger budgets for what the content is than most people expect. But a show like this, even with them globetrotting, even with them going from place to place, not on the same scale as what you're used to from like a Disney show.
No, I'll be honest. This past week, I watched the first episode of The Hot Zone, which is National Geographic's drama, and that I watched the first episode. It was scary. What I think now being like, when this came out, we weren't in a pandemic. So I watched the first episode and like it was set in like the late 80s, and there's a thing and they've got to go through quarantine, and it was like it's so much more scarier now having like lived through something like this of like what if it escapes, and like that always been that thing of what if it escapes, and there's always been this kind of thing like, oh, it will just wipe everybody out, but we don't. Like, well, no, we've lived through a world where we know what happens when this what happens, and it was just like, and how people react, and it's so much more scary now because of it. So, I really enjoyed that show. So we've watched that. So that's now going on to like our weekly rota. So I'll watch. I think there's 6 episodes. So we'll watch like an episode a week, I think, for that one for a while. So I'm really liking that one.
I'm not familiar with that one. That's a new one for me. But
they are making a second season. They
okay.
Are doing it, yeah.
But that did remind me of one of the early seasons of 24. I think it is season 3 or 4 or whatever. Somebody releases a really powerful virus or poison or something into like the ventilation of a hotel, and they contain it within like 7 hours, despite somebody getting out and infecting like 30 people at a Kmart. It's like, well, that show didn't age well, now did it?
Speaking of shows that didn't age well, we also had Love in the Age of Corona, or Love in the Time of Corona, got dropped internationally as a Star original this week. We got the 4 episodes. They originally aired on Freeform back in August last year and on Hulu. So this is like following 4 households. They all the actors live together. They're all like partners and stuff in real life, and follows their like life through lockdown. And there's a little bit of like Black Lives Matter brought into it as well. And I mean, while I appreciate that they gave it to us now, because it's technically it's not been released for us, so therefore it is a Star original. And they released all 4 episodes at once rather than doing it, because it kind of was more like essentially a movie, really been split into 4 parts. And while I like go, I'm glad you released it and I'm glad you did it, but you didn't. Why did you hype this up? It really did. Watching it back, I was like, oh, this really hasn't aged well. It was only August, and they obviously filmed this like June or July, and they're like, and I was a bit like, I really actually not interested in showing you like how you guys are living in 2020s. Like, I still, I'm still in the national lockdown. We still, things. We're just waiting for things to open up again, and it's like, I feel like I was a bit like, oh, I really just not into this. This is just too close to home, but it's like, oh god, I'm so over talking about it.
I mean,
it was like, oh,
it's not even just that. It's like this idea of doing a documentary or a retrospective or something on Corona while you're still in Corona just doesn't make sense at all. It's like,
well, this kind of, to me, this was more of a case of, oh no, we've got no shows coming, we haven't got anything being filmed, let's try and get something out. And if we have some actors that live together, or they're a couple, they can film stuff and we can edit all and do it all, and perfectly fine. Had this been released in August for us, you would have been, because we had a few shows like this as well over here in the UK, of lockdown shows which they'd filmed by themselves, and the kids were filming it and they edited it together, and it's fine. At the time, it worked fine because we were like starved of content, and it was like, oh, look what we've done. We've been able to make you content. But 6 months later, it was a bit like, yeah, whatever. We've put WandaVision on, please. Like,
yeah, just because there might be light at the end of the tunnel doesn't mean we're out of the tunnel. We're still here. It's still a daily thing. Don't really need the reminder.
Yeah, so that one dropped. We also got in the UK and Ireland, we got Next, which was a show that aired on Fox back in October. So that's a Star original. We're getting new episodes every week. So I watched the first episode with my wife last night. Did you watch Fox? Did you watch Next?
I remember it being announced, and then I forgot about it until you posted an article earlier last week.
Well, unfortunately, it got canned like after the second episode. So there's only 10 episodes. It's a bit like, well, why not just drop them all at once? If it's got no future, you might as well just done that. So this whole thing is about an AI bot that gets out onto the internet, and there's like really creepy of like this Alexa looking device talking to a kid and telling it to get a gun to go to school and take out the bullies. And it was like kind of got to the end, like I looked at one and go, should we unplug Alexa? Just like, I said to my wife, that's really freaky. I was like, oh no, they've only put one episode on. I'm like, and I was like, I want to watch next week because I want to see where this goes, because it was creepy, because this AI is just got too smart and too intelligent, and he managed to convince one of the workers to put hide a modem in so he could get out onto the internet, and it's like taking people out, like it's watching cameras, and like it turned off his ventilator in the opening scene to try and kill him, and it's just like, it was quite scary. It was just like, I was like, kind of got to the end and going, I kind of like that episode. I kind of like, it's like, I was like, because when a show's been cancelled, sometimes you're like, oh, shall I bother? I thought, well, I'll give it the first episode. I'm like, no, that was a good episode. I enjoyed it. It might fall to pieces later down the line, but the premise that I watched on the first one was, I kind of like that one.
Well, I mean, maybe that's part of the idea for why they're going to release it one per week, is that if they can build up enough buzz, then maybe it can be resurrected as a series. I mean, I don't know how they might have drawn a line in the sand after episode 10, because that kind of thing happens when a show gets canceled. But we've certainly seen shows get resurrected after positive buzz for streaming and things like that. Yeah. In the meantime, I'm going to go make sure that Alexa's got all the appropriate safeties on. Isn't that's the Star Trek Next Generation thing? They always pop into the holo chamber. What's it called? Holodeck.
Holodeck,
yeah, the holodeck, and it's like, oh, the safeties have been removed. Like, why do you even have those? They never seem to work anyway. I think we need to make sure that Alexa and Google have their safeties on.
I think looking at the numbers and the ratings in the US were pretty dire. And I don't think it helped them, because only barely, not even 2 million people watched it in the US. So it maybe just didn't resonate with people.
Or maybe people just didn't know about it. I don't remember hearing anything about it.
It's an awful name. It's Next, and it's not very sort of social. It's not very good SEO as well. It's like, I mean, you have to literally type in Next Fox to try and kind of narrow it down, because next just gets you nowhere. But I really enjoyed that series. I mean, we're also getting Big Sky, new episodes of that one. My wife is loving that series. I'm really enjoying that. The funny thing is, we did get a question on the Q&A, which I hadn't realized for tomorrow, was the US went on a mid-season break, and it's coming back, like, I think season 9 or episode 10 is coming back like through a few days after the US. So we might be actually catching, by the time we get to like episode 10, we might be catching up with the US like within a day or two, which I'm really hoping happens, because I'm really enjoying that show. It's a proper like detective show. Well, the fact that my wife is telling members of staff at the hospital about like, oh, you should be watching it, that's that's not me saying, and that's my wife and she's telling her mum and dad about it and stuff. That's the kind of thing that, and that's completely like what happens. That's what happens with TV shows.
And I think that people tend to underestimate the power of word of mouth in the streaming age. You feel like, I don't know, you hear about it through Twitter, you hear about it through Facebook, or maybe even Discord or Reddit, something like that. But there really is that network that we have, not the social network, not the Facebook network, but like the in-person network of going, hey, I saw this show and it's really, really cool. You should check it out. I was having the conversation with one of my coworkers yesterday now of some shows that we were recommending back and forth. It's like, hey, there's this Korean show, you should check that out. And he's going back, like The Kingdom, and like, oh yeah, you should try that. And you get recommendations. You go back and forth. Sometimes they pan out, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, generally, like my sister-in-law will quite often tell us about shows that we're not watching, that we've got into. Some of them we've just not clicked with. But yeah, there is that power. I mean, like, I'll, like with shows, I'll be like saying to my mum and dad, like, watch that. I don't need to, because they listen to the podcast. So it's like, so then I'll hear about this in a few days. You mentioned us. So they're, I don't know. I think they think I'm on the radio or something. But
I mean, that is kind of what a podcast is. It's like an old radio show.
Yeah. So there's that one. I'm enjoying. Love Victor. That one's been rolling along. That one's I'm still enjoying. It's kind of jumping up and down a bit depending on what story it is. It's still very much in that middle ground. It's like, it's fine. It's fine just to put on. It's not. My wife didn't really like it too much, so we're not watching it together. I've kind of carried on with that one. I'm enjoying it, but it's very kind of like mid to low. It's not must watch. I'm really enjoying Solar Opposites. I am laughing a number of times. There was a joke though, they did it, and I did actually kind of really let out a laugh that the dog actually looked at me, because it was, and it's like that's what you want from these kind of shows. You want that kind of humor. I'm really enjoying Solar Opposites. That's definitely I'm hoping. Well, I know season 2 drops later this month in the US. So I'm hoping we might get it in April, because season 1 ends over here in 2 more weeks. I think 2 or 3 more weeks, because we've been getting it weekly. But yeah, and I actually like that with this, because I feel like this is a show that, had I had all 10 episodes or all 8 episodes straight off the bat, would it have got boring? Would I have got like so with a 20-minute episode, it kind of keeps me engaged, and it's quite it's over quite quickly, because it's like, oh yeah. Because I think if I could just blast onto the next episode, it probably would have been done and dusted, and that would have been it.
And you probably wouldn't have been paying as close attention to it. So some of the jokes that you do end up laughing at, you might not, because you'd be like, oh, leave it on as a background while I work on this news article or something like that.
Well, that's it, because with Soul, I watch it. I'm one of the things going, oh no, right. I actually want to watch this show, and that is probably why it's working, because it's weekly.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's much harder to dedicate the time to say, I'm going to watch this show, when you've got 12 episodes, even if they're 20 minutes long. That's a decent chunk of time to be sitting down and watching, or breaking it up. But having it as a weekly drop, oh, it's Friday, time for a new episode of this. We've seen it plenty of times, even shows that I was super excited for, like the Netflix MCU shows, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, etc. Even though they dropped all at once, it would take me longer to watch them in those full drops, rather than I think they would now if they were weekly drops, because I could go, okay, Jessica Jones, watch the episode and wait a week. Watch them. when I'm making my own schedule, it gets pushed to the side for the things that are more time, in my mind, time critical. TV is not actually time critical, but you know what
Well,
I mean.
I'm also at that point where I'm actually starting to watch TV. I'm watching these episodes, and I've now become that thing of like I have a little. I'm making notes while I'm watching it. I've started doing that because I'm watching, because the addition of Star is really like, I kind of got used to the. In some way, we had like with Disney Plus last year of like so many episodes dropping at once that you watch it, and then they kind of dropped off. So we've only been like watching one episode. I haven't been tending to do it with WandaVision, but you have like this one, and then suddenly Star is now giving me like 6 things to watch. He gives us go, wow! I was like trying to remember what it was, but yeah, no, I'm. So we also watched the first episode of Hellstrom as well. I kind of watched that one, was like because I didn't tell my wife it was Marvel. It came up at the beginning. She went, because all you want to watch is Marvel shows. Like it's based on Marvel. She goes, oh great, another one. I said, whoa. I said, they're not superpowers. I said, anyway. So do you like Constantine and Lucifer, don't you? And she said, yes. I said, well, they're DC. I said, yeah. So this is like the Marvel version of like them. She goes, all right then. So she gave and we did, and I said, well, we got more episodes to watch, so we are going to be watching that one, but we're again doing that one weekly. We're a few weeks behind. That was, again, when a show's been cancelled and it goes right down your priority list of like, it's funny, but this is what happens when they announce a show's cancelled before it airs, and it happens a lot here in the UK. Like, this brand new show starting, and yeah, America's already cancelled it, so there's no point in time investing your time in it. And people, if they feel like it's been rubbish enough to be cancelled, people won't invest their time in it. And also, there's nothing worse than watching a cancelled show and then it ends on a cliffhanger.
Oh,
And it's not gonna.
That is the worst. Everyone's got some horror stories for some favorite show, and it ends, and you're just like, this can't be the end. Yeah.
V was the most recent one, the remake. I remember that ending, and it was like, what? It's always like, can you guys, if you're going to cancel it, you must make it part of your contract that you have to at least do 2 episodes or something like that to finish up a story. Especially if it's like been running for like 4 or 5 years, at least plan for it.
It is kind of fun though, coming from the comic side of things, because it happens all the time in comics. Comics get canceled frequently. It seems like there's a final issue every month or so, and you kind of realize there's a pattern to it with comics. There's one of 3 ways that you end a comic run. One, you just rush through all the storylines that you were going to do, and you might have years worth of stories and you just cram them into 2 issues. You might do well, now I'm just going to go completely off the wall because none of it matters. Or you just go, haha, we're ending with a cliffhanger because I can. And you're just like, you didn't bother to buy the comic? Well, you're not going to find out how it ends. Too bad.
Yeah.
It's like,
no. Right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up this week's show. I said there was a lot of other things like this week. I thought, well, I'll spend a bit of time on the Star originals because they kind of get lost a little bit. But yeah.
I was kind of thinking, well, you were mentioning, it's like the last time I took notes for this show was like the second week of the official Disney Plus launch, when we were watching 8 episodes where okay, this is what Jeff Goldblum was talking about, and this is like,
it's like I said, right now, I mean, this past week I've watched Solar Opposites, Love Victor, Hellstrom, Hot Zone. I needed to watch, and then we've watched and there's been other shows we've been watching as well aside from that, but just like from the Disney Plus point of view, and the Love and Corona that own the room of like, it's like, crikey, it's like that's like seven originals, like something like that, and then assembled, and then it's like, I mean, it's just like it's just like because we do get access to some of the Star originals. Sometimes I get them a few days early, so I can put them up on the Thursday when we're allowed to kind of post about them, which is really weird because it's like Dollface. I mean, I'm not enjoying that show, so I've not carried on watching it. So I'll be honest, that's why there's no review for it. But they're all available in Australia, all 10 episodes, and it's like that with like Solar Opposites and Love. It's like these are already out there. They've already been out there for like 6 months, but we've kind of, following what we've been like, well, I could probably just find them and watch them, but It is just, it's just one of those things. They're trying. I think it feels like they're just trying to get us used to the concept that they don't want us getting used to the binge model for Star. That's how it, because I mean, we're going to be getting like Rebel in April. Sorry, I think it's coming in May, and we're getting, so we are going to be getting shows that just after the US. I think we are going to. It's like the Aretha Franklin Genius show. We're not getting till June for some reason. It's coming out in the US like next weekend. It just, if some things I'm like, sort this out. Stop. Why are we having these delayed times? They shouldn't need to be.
When you were talking about solar opposites earlier, it's like, I hope that this is along the lines of what they do. It have them come out at the same time. There's no reason for it to not come out in the UK and the US at the same time. And
same thing with Secrets of Sulphur Springs. Why aren't we getting the same episodes internationally? We haven't got a Disney Channel. We haven't got them, so therefore there is no conflict of where are it's like, well, why aren't we getting them at the same time as the US? Because, or what this, there's no, we haven't got the Disney Channel to even watch it. So at the minute it will be, all it's like now, like like they announced a new Descendants animation short, and this new movie Spin last night, Disney Channel. But for us now, Disney Channel are Disney Plus originals, because you can't watch them anywhere else. Everything on the Disney Channel is now essentially a Disney Plus original in the UK and Australia, because we don't have, and it's like, well, why are you making us wait? They don't even have a channel.
I think even in America, even though we do have a Disney Channel, more people are just like, I'll just wait for it to come on to Disney Plus. I mean, it's Anyway,
on that note, guys, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much if you are a Patreon or a YouTube channel member. Really makes a massive difference for all of your support. I remember you can go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com, find us on all the social medias and all the rest of it, and we shall see you guys next week, where we will be talking about Falcon and the Winter. New show. We had a week off. Look at how much I was talking about.
Let's see your shirt here real fast.
Yes, I have got the Falcon and the Winter, and I've got the shield, so I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go.
I have Darth Vader. I'll be more ready next week. I'll be properly.
I kept thinking that you looked like you had a shotgun over your shoulder, but nevertheless,
I'm American.
Yes.
Bye.
See you later, guys.
Hi to Roger's parents.